Hi, Lily. It's so nice to meet you.
You too.
So, what is Cecilia's frame of mind as season two begins? She's gone through an awful lot up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, the frame of what's nice about season two is it picks up right where we left off at season one. So she's in shock, uh, in dismay, and at the lowest point she could possibly be at. And then things start to change about 5 minutes into the season two.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
In part of that 5 minutes, Royal gives Cece his speech about Grace and everything that he's gone through. And he was kind of at the end of his rope when he realized, he had this big epiphany about his own life. And it's kind of exactly where we find your character at the same time. So I'm wondering how will her journey kind of mirror his journey, but we'll get to see yours because his wasn't necessarily taking place on camera as much as yours is going to be, I think, in the second season.
I think Charles, the creator, is really wanted to see what happens when two people are lost from each other and how they find their way back. And even it's not even find their way back; it's actually find out who they really are, because maybe they didn't ever really know who the other was. So that's where Royal and Cecilia are starting to go as a couple. And I think that's exciting because we know relationships are kind of the thing, with being human is it's a big part of being human. And I think that's where interesting stuff starts to happen. And so there's just possibilities are just open. Like, are they going to work or not?
In season one, Cecilia had a lot of really emotional moments, but they were all you on your own. Like, you know, sitting down and screaming God is gone, and just so emotional, and it got so much from you. Will you get a chance to do some of that with other people? Working with Josh as a couple, will you two have those same types of intense meetings during the season?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I haven't really realized that. And you're right. And I think season two is more about a group for Cecilia. It's more about relation as opposed to isolated off in her own little world. Um, and so it was a lot more not friendly, but just like not as lonely. Because my dynamics involve other people now this season.
And in the finale, of course, Amy disappears. And by the end of the hour, Royal's like, no, she's here. And that brings up this entire new dynamic of exactly who Autumn is and what it means based upon everything we know about the whole. How hard is it going to be for Cecilia to wrap her head around this? And especially in light of the fact that everybody else seems to know what's going on except her. Like they've all been let in on little pieces of the secret, but she's just kind of coming into it at one of the worst moments of her life. And there have been several in a very short span. And yet it opens up this entire world of possibilities that I don't know how you could wrap your head around that when you're also experiencing grief.
Well, it's so interesting because it's like as human beings, it's like we're really resilient at the end of the day, even when we're faced with something that's incomprehensible, which is where Cecilia's at is incomprehensible, like losing a son to a hole. She didn't even know what the hole is. Losing her granddaughter, I mean, her farm, her everything. She is so in another realm that she's sort of like, I think maybe realizing she can take anything now at this point. And so with the Amy and the Autumn figuring that out, there's this sort of embracing of the absurd, this sort of embracing of, okay, bring it on. I wouldn't be surprised if anything happened right now. There's something interesting about being in that state.
And that is kind of how it plays out this season, where she's just like, okay, if I'm living
Yeah,
within this
right.
absurdity, then I'm taking control. And she really does. She becomes a
Right.
very strong and active participant in changing the tone of the season and how it might end. How
That's
fun
right.
was that?
Agency. I loved having agency as opposed to like, instead of no, I'm kind of like, I'm on it. And then I do some other stuff, which you'll see later, which involves, you know, uh, confronting a man
Hmm.
physically, which is always fun.
And Cecilia also has this really close relationship with nature and animals, and that kind of continues this season as well. Um, Not necessarily with you portraying that part, but with young Cecilia, we see so much from her and her connection to nature. What does that say about her as a person? And what part do they play in this story overall?
Well, to tell you the truth, because I'm a birder, I'm actually kind of a naturalist, but Cecilia isn't actually. It's very different when you're on a ranch and animals are your livelihood. And it's there's a connection to the natural world, but it's very different. And in some ways it's tough. It's you see death a lot. It's part of it. It doesn't, she's not squeamish. Um, she doesn't have if something's got to go, it's got to go. It's a very kind of yes or no. And so it's not it's complicated to tell you the truth.
Sure.
Especially for me, like, well, I have a little bit of that too. I can kind of like, if I see a hawk eat a little bird, a sweet little bird, I'm happy the hawk has a meal. I don't have a problem. I don't get into that Disney thing. And she doesn't either, but she's even a little rougher than me in that she sees a lot of cows killed. That's how she makes her money. And and in terms of animals, it overall, I would say they almost have a spiritual dimension overall in the series, I think.
Hmm.
They are harbingers of of things happening. Of course, we've got the Native American
Hmm.
angle, which of course their relationship to animals. So it's a nice kind of, it's like the rancher, and then it's like a spiritual component, which is kind of a nice blend.
Right. So, how does believing that Autumn and Amy are the same person, how does that affect like the veracity that she's going to be looking for her granddaughter who's missing? I mean, how do you wrap your head around the fact that you know she's going to be okay, but she's not okay now? So, how does that change everything, I guess, during the search?
Well, it's interesting because I was kind of thinking about Back to the Future. And remember when he was of the movie and it was felt like decisions he made when he was back in time could have impacted his parents. And so I think there was that feeling, even though I know she's okay, you're still playing around with things that are out of comprehension. And so there's that feeling of, but it could change maybe not the moment, but Autumn's future if things aren't dealt with right now. Though that was kind of not magical thinking, but maybe a way of just some structures that she put in place to help her mentally with this incomprehensible, and I've said that word maybe 5 times in this interview, and I'm realizing that's maybe the theme for me of the show, incomprehensible.
And knowing what she knows of Autumn, she probably hopes that she can stop the Autumn that she knows. You know,
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
she's probably not who she imagined her granddaughter was.
Right, right.
If you saw a hole in your yard and it had possibilities of time travel, what would you do?
I would call a scientist. I would find out, the ones who maybe get 4 different types of scientists in who have specialized in different aspects, like a geologist, whatever. I'd get a paleontologist in just in case there's any dinosaurs in there. And I would just give it to them and let them figure out what to do because it's something I wouldn't want to mess around with.
Probably the very right answer in this case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today,
Thank
Lily.
you.